He estimates it is approximately 30 feet wide, the size of a small RV today. He also claims the egg-shaped craft has 4 landing supports at its base. Suddenly, the object lifts off with the same bluish flame traveling to the southeast. It disappears within minutes. Pat is in Socorro, New Mexico, hoping to find new leads based on James McDonald's file.
It's really hard to emphasize how significant the Lonnie Zamora case is. It's been a part of every major UFO report since Project Blue Book. So this case has never been solved, and that's why we have to look at it.
Local historian and reporter Paul Harden recently covered Zamora's sighting in the El Defensor Chieftain newspaper. And after more than 40 years, he found that Zamora's story still has legs.
Can you tell me why people are still talking about this incident 40 years after it happened?
That's a good question. I was kind of surprised myself. I do a lot of history articles, never UFO articles before.
You don't consider yourself a ufologist?
No, not really. I was really surprised at how many people in town actually remembered it or were involved in it. So it got kind of interesting.
So from a historical point of view, this is real history. This really happened.
No doubt in my mind that the incident happened. The only thing that history can't tell you is, what did Mr. Zamora see? I can't answer that.
Zamora's account is one of the most specific UFO sightings ever recorded. According to McDonald's Zamora file, not only did he provide descriptions of the object's size, appearance, speed, and behavior, but reports described marks left in the sand by the object, as well as fused sand and scorched brush. Numerous witnesses to these strange physical traces are on scene within minutes after the sighting.
So immediately you have a fair number of law enforcement agents that were at the scene 10 minutes or so after Lonnie saw it.
When you say at the scene, you mean they went to the landing site?
They went to the actual landing site.
Okay, and so these were law officers that could confirm that there were landing impressions in the dirt.
Correct.
And that there were burned bushes.
As a matter of fact, in the original Defensor Chieftain story, they cite how when they arrived at the scene, the plants were still smoldering.
Wow.
So, tell you something happened.
Many people have looked into the Zamora sighting, but few have come up with any solid conclusions. Some believe this is because Zamora has remained silent for over a decade. But Pat is on his way to hear the story firsthand. Lonnie Zamora has agreed to break his silence. As Pat heads out into the desert, Ted travels to Castle Air Museum in Atwater, California, to meet with aviation expert Bill Scott. The two are looking into James McDonald's file on the sighting of a UFO trailing a state-of-the-art RB-47 in 1957.
Now, Professor McDonald was really interested in this case because he felt there was an awful lot of technology involved which was giving up serious hard evidence. It was our most sophisticated listening technology on the planet, really.
The RB-47E was the reconnaissance backbone of the U.S. Air Force during the 1950s. It was specifically outfitted not to carry weaponry, but highly sensitive ELINT, or electronic intelligence technology, used to intercept radar signals.
Its job, with all its electronic gear on board, would be to fly along the border of the Soviet Union, for instance, and listen for the Russian radars that were transmitting.
In the 1950s, when this aircraft was launched, it was our most sophisticated radar listening equipment in the world, right?
That's exactly right. 1950s technology, of course, but that was the state of the art. It was critical to our national security, so of course we had the best electronic gear that was available.
But the U.S. Air Force's best available technology would soon encounter something beyond its own capabilities. July 17, 1957, just after 4 a.m., an RB-47 with a 6-man crew is on a routine training mission over the Gulf of Mexico, near the town of Gulfport, Mississippi. On the number 2 monitor, one of the officers detects a signal moving rapidly. For the next 90 minutes and 700 miles, the aircraft's ELINT, ground radar installations, and even the Air Force pilots themselves will observe a strange object tracking one of the Air Force's most important aircraft.
Nice.
This crew was on their way back from a training mission, all 6 of them aboard, 3 of whom were the ELINT operators. So this is the end of their training. They were about to ship out. So they're probably at the height of their expertise, just finishing up an extensive training program in the States before deployment.
At the time, this was our front line fighting force, Strategic Air Command. So these ELINT operators would have been very well trained because literally the fate of the country were in their hands and the pilots that flew these airplanes.
How about the ELINT equipment? How long had that been out? Is there any chance that this equipment was malfunctioning, or it's such a brand new technology that there's some question there? Or was this tried and true hardware?
I would say it's probably tried and true hardware at the time. Yeah. So it was cutting edge, very well maintained.
According to James McDonald's report, despite this being the most advanced equipment in service, the officer who first spots the object on the ELINT thinks the equipment is malfunctioning.
They had one of the other operators that double-checked it, tried it on another monitor, which would use a different set of antennas on the RB-47. They established very early on that the equipment was working fine, everything was perfect.
But the rest of the crew is about to get an up-close and personal view of whatever is appearing on their scope. As the RB-47 approaches Jackson, Mississippi for the second part of its exercise, one of the pilots spots what he first thinks are landing lights of another jet coming in fast. As the single bluish-white light closes rapidly, he alerts the rest of the crew to be ready for sudden evasive maneuvers. But before he can attempt anything, both he and his co-pilot see the light instantaneously change directions and flash across their flight path. Then, it blinks out. In these rare recordings from the files, James McDonald is heard conducting an interview with a pilot who encountered the object, Colonel Lewis D. Chase.
I was looking at it as a pilot at night, seeing a light source that I had interpreted as an airplane. But then suddenly it was flying past me so fast that I couldn't go on.
Did it simply blink out, or did it take off at the appreciable angular velocity?
No, just gone.
Just disappeared. Blinked.
Yeah.
It's quite an intercept when you read there. that is really strange.
Now, these were trained aircraft pilots. These are United States Air Force officers. These guys know what aircraft look like.
Nothing in the U.S. military arsenal has the ability to simply blink out. In the report, the pilot, a 20-year veteran, claims the object moved at a velocity, quote, he'd never seen matched in his flight experience.
And for them to be really shocked about something they saw visibly says a lot. So now you add to that in addition to the visible sighting, we had, this aircraft, the technology back here in the bay, was our most sophisticated listening system for listening to radar.
With no surviving images from the flight's ELINT, Ted turns to the testimony in McDonald's files to verify the object's incredible maneuvers. And Bill zeroes in on Rex Heflin's photographs with a field test putting the hoax theory on the line.
I'd hit good fun.
It's a Spanish merit that possibly predates the money pit by at least 150 years.
The menorah, the Temple of Solomon, could be buried on Oak Island. It could have been a shipwreck.
I can connect every single diamond.
Several generations died looking for something here. I'm getting tired of this island kicking our butt. This could be it. This could be the find.